The ONEXPLAYER 2 is here. We will do all the usual unboxing and overview, followed by system and games benchmarks. Then play some games and emulators at playable settings, and finish up with my thoughts on this handheld. ONEXPLAYER has changed from their usual shoebox style design to a square one. Let's see what's inside. First, we have the ONEXPLAYER 2 unit itself, which we will take a closer look at shortly. Inside the first box we have two detachable controllers. And inside the second box we have a power charger and USB Type-C cable. We will include the correct plug adapter for your country. The ONEXPLAYER 2 is available in two colours, Midnight Black and Snow White. It measures around 12.2 by 5.0.9 inches with the controllers connected and weighs around 848 grams. The display is a 8.4 inch touchscreen with a native resolution of 2560 by 1600. Along with the AOKZOE A1, it is the largest display and resolution out of all of the handhelds. The two detachable controllers are fairly light as they are externally powered by either the main unit or separately sold hand grip. The hand grip was not available at the time of making this review. The connection is strong and there's nowhere near enough wiggle room like on the ONEXPLAYER GX1. We were afraid to pick that one up by the controls, but we can definitely say this feels far more sturdy. Along the top we have the power button, volume buttons and turbo button, which brings up the OXP software. This unit is a preview model, so the software is not finalised, and as a result some buttons do other tasks. This will be corrected in the final model. There is a 3.5mm headphone port, USB Type-C and Type-A ports, and finally a micro SD card for additional storage. On the bottom there is a 4-pin connection for future accessories, such as a keyboard for example, and there is a USB Type-C port. On the back we have the useful kickstand to keep the ONEXPLAYER 2 upright on a desk. The ONEXPLAYER 2 uses the AMD Ryzen 7 6800U processor with AMD Radeon 680M graphics. We have seen from other similar handhelds that this is a popular choice for its performance. It's available in 16 and 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM and a choice of 1 or 2 TB of high-speed PCIe SSD. For wireless communication there is Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2. The ONEXPLAYER features a 65.5 Wh battery, the largest found in all of the current generation handhelds. In our test whilst running Cinebench we got 1 hour 40 minutes at 28 watts TDP at 1600p on full load. We got 9 hours 30 minutes at 28 watts TDP at 1600p on idle on the desktop, and 2 hours 46 minutes at 15 watts 800p on full load. Also during the test under full load we got 68 decibels highest fan noise and 38 degrees C temperature. The OXP software overlay can be opened at any time. You can quickly and easily change commonly used settings such as the TDP, GPU frequency, fan speed, brightness and volume. You can also easily switch screen resolution, alter the brightness, etc. It's got everything you need in terms of quick access to functions. While it's not anywhere near its competitor, the ISpace from Neo, it does do the job fine. One thing to note is that with anti-cheating software such as those used on FIFA 23, you may need to close the OXP software before running the game, as it will prevent you from running it. We start our system benchmarks with PCMark. It tests everything from day-to-day tasks up to the more demanding work such as large office documents and image processing. The ONEXPLAYER 2 scores 5847. We can see that the score is a little lower than average, but not the lowest, which is the Duke with D Win 4. Cinebench tests the CPU performance, and we are running the multi-core test. The ONEXPLAYER 2 scores 11,294. The ONEXPLAYER 2 scores very well, with just its smallest brother, the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro, beating it. For 3D Mark, we get a score of 2,815 for Time Spy, 25,447 on Night Raid, and 6,739 on Firestrike. The ONEXPLAYER 2 does a great job of 3D Mark with the highest scores across all three tests. So far so good. As always, we also run some gaming benchmarks to push the device to its limit. But before we get started, please help us to get to 10k subscribers, as we are very close now. You can help grow this channel and we can continue making these videos. It takes just a moment and it helps us out a lot, and thanks if you have subscribed. For these benchmarks, we will be testing the ONEXPLAYER 2's highest resolution of 2560 by 1600 at 11, 20 and 28 watts TDP, as well as 1200p and 800p at 28 watts, to get a range of performance differences for comparison. We are running Forza Horizon 5 on the lowest graphic settings. First, we have the benchmark results across all of the tests we performed. This includes 1600p, 1200p and 800p at different TDPs. And for our comparisons, we're using 1200 and 800p at 28 watts TDP results. The results are fairly close to each other, with around the early 90s FPS at 1200p and 110 to 120 area for the 800p resolution. The ONEXPLAYER 2 takes the highest position along with the GPD WinMax 2. We are running Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the lowest graphic settings. Again, we have the 1600p, 1200 and 800p results across different TDPs. Overall, they are decent scores, with 1200 and 800p at over 60 frames per second. And compared to the other 6800U based handhelds, we again get very similar results. The ONEXPLAYER 2 is in the higher range of frames per second. For Cyberpunk 2077, we are running on the low graphic settings, again with the same resolutions and TDPs. It is quite a demanding game, and we can see above 60 frames per second performance at 800p. And compared to the other models, we see roughly the same performance on average as the other handhelds. And last but not least, we are testing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on the minimal graphic settings. On the same resolution and TDP settings, we can see a good performance at 1200 and 800p, above 60 FPS. And compared to the other handhelds, we again get around average performance. We will check out the best settings for the game shortly. So overall, the ONEXPLAYER 2 does very well in the benchmarks. It generally appears in the higher or average results. Do remember that some handhelds were benchmarked a few months ago, so software and driver updates can increase or decrease the performance. But again, overall we are very impressed by the performance. We are now playing some games at playable graphic settings, one for the best quality and the other for best battery life when possible. Some of these games and emulated games were suggested by our viewers on social media, so thanks to those on screen below now. We had a few requests for FIFA 23. You do need to enable secure boot in the BIOS, which takes like 2 minutes to do, and you will also need to close the OXP software due to the EA anti-cheat software. But other than that, the game runs at 1600p locked to 60 FPS with no issues at all. To save battery, you can go down to 800p and lower the TDP. We couldn't get exact frame rates to check due to the anti-cheat software, but it was still running fine at 15 watts TDP. Hot off the press is Wanted Dead. You can go for 28 watts 800p low quality at 60 FPS for mostly stable frame rates. If you limit the frame rate to 30, you can go up to high quality, which visually looks far nicer. To save battery, you can run it at 15 watts at 30 FPS on low quality graphic settings. As with all of the 6800U base handhelds, we are running at 28 watts 800p on the minimal graphic settings, with no upscaling for clearer visuals. You can use these settings on both the campaign and multiplayer modes. To save battery, you can limit the frames to 30 and lower the TDP a little. For Final Fantasy 15, we are running at 28 watts 800p on the average graphic settings with 30 frames per second limit on. When running at 60 frames, it was dropping as low as 45 during busy scenes, so it was a bit jumpy. You could either lower the graphics quality or limit it to 30 frames and it runs solid. To save battery, you could do both and drop the TDP a bit. Again, as with all the other 6800U handhelds, you can run up to the Dolphin era with no issues whatsoever. With many of the emulators, you can upscale the visuals for improved quality or lower the TDP for great battery life. So let's take a brief look at the higher end emulators. A few people suggested some games to try, but they were not fully playable on RPCS3 yet. Gran Turismo 6 and Uncharted were two of the games which are not compatible just yet, but hopefully are in the future. So we checked with our tried and tested Wipeout HD and got mostly full 60 frames per second on it. Other games will not be as fast and may have shader caching lags. For Ryujinx and Yuzu emulators, we see good performance on compatible games. For older and less demanding games, you can usually get full speed from them. For newer or more demanding games, you will probably experience some slowdowns or running at like 50% speed. Xbox 360 support is something we take a look at in the reviews to show what can be possible in the future, as this is a work in progress emulator. For compatible games such as Sonic Racing Transformed and Vanquish, we get a mostly solid 30 FPS frame rate, but other games will have issues. When I first saw the ONEXPLAYER 2 detachable controllers, I thought back to their One Netbook GX1 and was not convinced. But after spending a few days with the ONEXPLAYER 2, my concerns with the detachable controllers are now gone. There is very minor movement if you do apply some pressure to intentionally move them, but it's nothing that is concerning or would cause an issue. As to how the detachable controllers feel with the hand grip, we will try them in a separate review once they are available. The overall feel and usability of the ONEXPLAYER 2 is okay. Along with the AOKZOE, they are the largest devices in this generation and do have a fair bit of weight to them. You would not be able to play for long periods of time without resting your hands on your lap or desktop, for example. The analog joysticks are okay to play on, and I had no issues reaching any gaming buttons, although I would not have minded slightly larger joystick caps to match the size of the handheld. To put it in comparison, they are exactly the same size as the ones used on the GBD Win 4. What you could do is put some thumb caps on them to increase the size. You do have the benefit of a larger display size and up to 1600p resolution. Depending on the game, it is possible to run them at 1600p at good graphics levels. But in most cases, you will likely be running at 800 or 1200p for some games. The 1600p resolution would be great for, say, watching videos, especially on the larger screen. The ONEXPLAYER 2 is great for performance. We saw that it got at least above average scores in the benchmarks. However, in most cases, you will not see a massive difference in performance compared to the other handhelds whilst playing a game. They do all essentially perform the same at 1200 and 800p resolutions. So once again, we do come down to deciding which handheld to buy based on its size, features and so on. The ONEXPLAYER 2 with detachable controls makes this an interesting feature. You can put the main unit on your desk or table and sit back on the sofa with the controllers, for example, whilst with the others you would need to use a separate controller. The larger screen and higher resolution is something you could consider, but the physical size should also be taken into consideration. It definitely requires a bag to carry around and wouldn't fit in a jacket pocket, for example. With the larger size comes a larger battery, and with this we do get around 20% more life than others whilst under full load. This is a definite bonus if you're travelling, for example. You can learn more and buy the ONEXPLAYER 2 from us at DROIX.co.uk and DROIX.net for worldwide shipping. Use the discount code OXP25OFF on the checkout for a 5% discount. Note that discount codes are disabled during store sales and promotions. Let us know in the comments what you think about the ONEXPLAYER 2. Would you buy this model or go for the smaller ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro or maybe something else? We are always interested to read your comments, so let us know. That wraps up our ONEXPLAYER 2 review. We hope you have found it useful. Before you click on the next video, don't forget to take a moment to subscribe and help to grow this channel. We have plenty of great content planned. Thanks for watching and we hope to see you back in the next one.